Sonny Liston is the most enigmatic boxer in history. He is often portrayed as a rough, mean, dumb gangster who doesn't know how to read and ended his life by suicide, where in reality, he was a well-read, reserved individual.
Sonny Liston, the misunderstood champ,
who was forced into crime to survive.
the one who scared Foreman and Tyson.
No one was more intimidating than Sonny Liston, not even myself.
His death remains a true mystery, with decades spent trying to uncover the truth.
Many say overdose or suicide, but he was coldly controlled.
Depicting Liston as an evil, dim-witted gangster was primarily advantageous for the media because the fights that sell best in boxing are the ones where the bad guy fights the good guy. Probably the most striking example of such a confrontation was the fight on September 25, 1962, in which heavyweight champion Floyd Patterson faced title challenger Sonny Liston. On the surface, it was simple, black and white, good Patterson and bad Liston. But if you dig a little deeper, the situation doesn't look so clear-cut anymore. No one knows exactly when Charles Sonny Liston came into the world, but it was in the time frame of about 1928 to 1932. Officially, May 8, 1932. But that date was given by Liston himself. His mother maintained that he was born on January 8th or 18th. Why the confusion? Liston was the 24th child of 25 in a family that worked on cotton plantations from early morning until late at night. This number of children had a practical use. Children were needed as a labor force. Liston Sr. used to harness Sonny to the plow because there were not enough mules. If the father thought his son was doing a poor job, he would whip him. It could be a couple of strokes, and sometimes it was a brutal beating. Sonny bore the scars from the whip for the rest of his life. In 1945, Liston Jr. ran away from home and went to St. Louis, where his mother, who had left her husband, lived. When Sonny arrived at his mother's house, the surprise for her was not pleasant. Where would an uneducated dark-skinned boy in a big city go in such a situation? Most people, of course, would say, into crime. But Sonny Liston decided he needed an education. He couldn't write or read, so he had to start over. But he was much older than his classmates and looked like Gulliver in Lilliput. For this, he was constantly bullied and dropped out of school. His tyrant father bullying at school and his mother's spiteful attitude sent Sonny Liston straight to the street. He had to literally survive, and mostly with his fists. Liston was incredibly gifted physically, and in a street fight he couldn't even be handled by a group of a few people. Sonny was the real terror of St. Louis. Seeing that the poor black population has virtually no chance for decent employment, he began to make a living by criminal robberies. The objects were mostly roadside cafes and gas stations. On June 1, 1950, Liston began serving a 5-year sentence for his crimes at the Missouri State Correctional Center, one of the most gruesome prisons in the United States. Times magazine in the 60s dubbed this prison America's bloodiest 47 acres because of the sheer number of fights, assaults, and murders inside the facility itself. Serial killers, racists, mercenaries, rapists, and members of armed street gangs were incarcerated there. Even among such cream of society, Liston's charisma and intimidating appearance created a safe buffer zone around him that no one wanted to cross. It was in prison that Sonny was introduced to boxing. He had attempts to take up the sport as early as 13 years old, but at that time, he did not take it seriously. Seeing his physical data, he was offered to take part in the prison boxing program. Liston was sparred with former professional boxer Thurman Wilson. After 2 rounds, Wilson refused to continue, saying, "He's going to kill me." Thanks to his boxing talent and good behavior, Liston was released much earlier. Instead of 5 years, Sonny served 2.5 years and was released in October 1952. Interestingly, remembering the prison, Liston did not regret. He said, "I was fed 3 times a day and it was enough for me." About the boxing phenomenon learned one of the most famous Italian-American mafiosi, one half of the 20th century, Frankie Carbo. In the 50s, he held high positions in criminal structures, and at the same time was an influential manager and promoter in boxing. but not official, and shadow. After his release, Liston spent just under a year in the amateurs. He won the Golden Gloves of the city of Chicago. In September 1953, with the support of Frankie Carbo, he began his professional career. In the late 50s, there was a government purge of professional boxing because boxing was popular, but it was perceived as a sport closely associated with crime. Frankie Carbo served 2 years for running a boxing management business without a license. He got out in 1960, and in 1961, he was arrested again for conspiracy and extortion and sent to prison for 25 years. Because Carbo was Liston's manager, Sonny's license was taken away. To restore it, had to testify in a U.S. Senate investigation into the influence of organized crime on professional boxing. As a result of the investigation, Liston's license was returned. But let's go back a little bit. In 1956, when Liston's career was interrupted because of problems with the police. In those years, racial discrimination was rampant in the United States. Since the St. Louis police already knew who Liston was, the cops didn't give him a moment's peace. It wasn't even just that the police were harassing Liston. It's not even that the police were harassing Liston exclusively. It's that the police were harassing a huge number of people in the black population of the United States. Liston was once fined for a traffic violation for simply walking on the sidewalk. The story reached its peak in early May 1956. When Liston literally tried to hand him a parking ticket on the spot. Sonny noticed that the policeman was drunk and resented this circumstance. The policeman responded by calling him a black ass. Liston couldn't stand it and broke the policeman's leg, took away his gun, and left the scene. Taking into account that this episode had many witnesses, the case was decided not to inflate, but Liston still had to spend 9 months in corrective labor. As soon as he was released, provocations from the police continued. Another conflict with an inadequate policeman ended with Liston shoving him into a garbage can. On the one hand, the police should not have been touched. On the other hand, according to eyewitnesses, the two racists got what they deserved. However, after that, Liston was explicitly hinted that if he didn't leave town after that, he would simply be shot. Sonny moved almost 1,500 kilometers east to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He returned to the ring in January 1958, and over the next 2.5 years, he had 16 fights. Sonny destroyed one opponent after another, and in the mid-summer of 1960, he was the unanimous #1 ranked contender in the super heavyweight division. The undisputed champion was Floyd Patterson. Liston was ready to fight for the title, but there were certain circumstances that prevented this. Because at the time Liston became a contender, Floyd Patterson represented something more than a super heavyweight champion of the world. Floyd Patterson was born in 1935 in North Carolina, but his family later moved to Brooklyn, New York. By the age of 10, Patterson had stopped attending school and engaged in petty theft on the street. But he was caught and placed in a reformatory for children, where he spent 2 years. He was then transferred to a regular school, where he was introduced to boxing at the age of 14. Patterson's progress was so rapid that already at the age of 17, that is, 3 years after he started boxing, he was sent to the 1952 Olympics in Helsinki, where he became the Olympic champion in the middleweight division. Patterson made his professional debut that same year under the tutelage of Casa D'Amato, who began to instill in the boxer the famous peekaboo style, the same style that D'Amato would successfully instill in Mike Tyson 3 decades later. After World Super Heavyweight Champion Rocky Marciano ended his career and successfully vacated the title in November 1956, 21-year-old Floyd Patterson and reigning World Light Heavyweight Champion Archie Moore, 42, played for the championship belt. Moore was the favorite for the fight, but Patterson's youth and skills took over. While for Floyd, it was the 32nd fight of his career. For Moore, it was 190. You heard right. It was the 190th fight in the career of the old mongoose, as Moore was called. However, in time, one fight in his career was recognized as unofficial, but the general essence of this does not change. By the way, Moore owns one of the most significant records in the history of boxing. He has the largest number of early victories among boxers who became world champions. Archie Moore has 132 early victories, but back to Floyd Patterson. He, at 21 years and 331 days, became the youngest super heavyweight world champion in boxing history at the time. If you look at the regularity of Patterson's performances after winning the title, It might seem like he was ahead of his time. He only had 1-2 fights a year, which is more typical of modern boxing, mid-20th century boxing. This was the work of Casa D'Amato, who was not only a great trainer, but a great manager. D'Amato negotiated very tough, as if he was in charge in every situation. The result of his work was that Patterson was getting fees that without Cass, he would never have seen. $100,000 for the first title fight, $125,000 for the second, and $250,000 for the third. Almost $500,000 for 3 fights in the 50s. That was a lot of money. D'Amato was very skillful in leading his charge, not only financially, but also amongst his opponents. D'Amato sometimes let his boxer bypass dangerous challengers. For example, he bypassed Zora Foley, who, being the #1 contender, was not honored to fight for the title, because D'Amato chose the #4 ranking Roy Harris. There was another moment that no one would pay attention to now, but in those days, it was literally eye-catching. Patterson won the title against Archie Moore, then defended the belt against Tommy Jackson. Both were black. Patterson's next 5 opponents were white, despite the fact that the trilogy with Ingemar Johansson turned out to be one of the best in boxing history, and Johansson was the #1 contender at the time of their first meeting. Patterson began to be accused of avoiding dangerous challengers, as well as avoiding black opponents. When Patterson regained the lost title in his second fight with Johansson, the undisputed challenger for the belt was Sonny Liston, but Patterson opted for a third fight with the Swedish boxer. After the victory in the third fight, it seemed that nothing was in the way of a fight between Patterson and Liston, but Cass D'Amato said that Patterson would not fight Liston because Sonny is connected to the Mafia. Instead of the first number in the ranking Liston, Cass chose as an opponent for his boxer Tom McNeely, who was located on the 9th line of the ranking. It should be noted that in those days, everyone relied on the Ring magazine ranking, and if the Ring put someone in the first place, no one disputes it. But the magazine could not force the champion to fight with this first number. That was only part of the picture, which in reality was much bigger. If you look at Floyd Patterson through more than just a boxing lens. In the early 60s in the United States, there was a sharp jump in the activity of the movement for the rights of black people. The movement was born in 1955 in the city of Montgomery, Alabama, when a black seamstress, Rosa Parks, was arrested and fined for refusing to give up her seat to a white passenger. She actually broke the law, according to which the first 4 rows in the bus were only for white citizens. Blacks could only sit in the seats behind those rows. If all the front seats were occupied, a black citizen was obligated to give up his or her seat upon the request of a white citizen. Parks refused to give up her seat and was therefore arrested. This provoked a boycott of the bus lines in Montgomery by the city's black population. The protest, which lasted 381 days, was led by Martin Luther King, a prominent black rights activist. Since black citizens made up 70% of the city's population, the bus line suffered huge losses. Not to say that this had any effect, but the bid was made, and in the early 60s, the black rights movement intensified its activity. Black people began to seek support from influential people among the white population and attracted famous black people to their ranks. One such person was the super heavyweight champion of the world, Floyd Patterson. Patterson became a knight in white armor, and in January 1962, the unimaginable happened. Floyd was invited to the White House for a meeting with John F. Kennedy. The U.S. president gave his hand to the black boxer. The world had changed. The problem was that the Patterson-Liston fight was now a political issue, and politics always gets in the way of sports. A powerful black rights organization didn't want Patterson to fight Liston. On paper, it looked like Floyd didn't stand a chance against Sonny. Both boxers, though in different statuses, had become puppets in the hands of those who moved the pieces on the political chessboard. One wanted to keep the other one in the status of champion, the other not to let him to fight for the title. But if you open specialized boxing publications, you can read that Patterson is afraid of Liston, that in fact it is Liston who is the best super heavyweight, not the champion Patterson. There was even an article calling Sonny the new Joe Louis. Liston's positive publicity was unprofitable. It was necessary to smear him in the mud, and then a reliable tool, proven over the years, was used, an objective and independent, in quotes, press. The newspapers started thrashing Sonny Liston. They reminded him of all his sins, Articles with headlines whether Sonny Liston deserves the title status began to come out one after another, and of course the authors came to the conclusion that he does not deserve. But since Liston's serious athletic achievements could not be denied, everyone wrote that Sonny did not deserve the fight from a moral point of view. They called him a threat to civilization, a threat to the purity of sport. The articles wrote, yes, he is black, but he works for white mobsters. Liston created the image of a criminal whose place is not in the ring, but in prison. Although for his sins, Sonny has already served his sentence. Liston is certainly far from ideal, but he did not deserve such a humiliating treatment. The press called him a gorilla, a primitive man, a beast of the jungle. One headline read, Sonny Liston is a heavyweight nobody likes. Another read, bad man in and out of the ring. And just below is a short profile, big 27-year-old Sonny Liston, who could be the next super heavyweight champion, a violent man who couldn't read or write. About not being able to write and read, that wasn't true. Sonny could both read and write. The journalist's dislike of Liston was affecting him on a personal level, in addition to the added financial incentive. Sonny made no secret of the fact that he didn't trust journalists, and he also didn't like stupid questions. Once he said, journalists ask stupid questions. When they look at the sun, they ask if it's shining or not, and it must be said that these words of Liston will always be true. When someone asked him a stupid question, Sonny always gave a short but very clear answer, after which the journalist had nothing to say. Sometimes he could just look menacingly at the journalist and not answer, because he didn't think it was worth wasting his personal time. Even though Sonny didn't even have a high school education, he wasn't a stupid person. And he knew a lot more about life than the journalism graduates who were offended to be exposed by some uneducated. So they played on him in their articles as best they could. After a prolonged information attack, Liston simply didn't have a chance to fight for the title. But suddenly, and this was the real shocker, one man stepped up for Sonny Liston. This man's name is Floyd Patterson. They didn't want me to fight him because there was a good chance he would win the fight. And apparently, if he won the fight, he would be seen as the epitome of the black race. I, on the other hand, felt that his life path was similar to mine. I thought he should get his chance. So I went against my manager and gave him a chance. I think he has fully proved that he is the #1 contender. Personally, I think he has every right to fight for the title despite his unfortunate past. I'm sure you're happy with Patterson's actions and his willingness to fight you. He said some good things about you, Sonny. Yes, he did, and I was actually surprised that he insisted on the fight. It was the act of a truly great champion and a great man. Patterson made all those who were trashing Liston look like pathetic losers. Despite opposition from his manager and trainer, Cassius, Patterson declared that in his next fight, he would fight only Liston. On September 25th, 1962, the seemingly impossible happened. Floyd Patterson stepped up to fight Sonny Liston. Observers considered Liston a favorite about 4-1, but the bookies had the ratio at only 1.5-1 in Sonny's favor. The reason was that a huge number of people bet on Patterson, believing that the charming gentleman Patterson will definitely beat this terrible criminal Liston, because good always beats evil, because so wrote in the newspapers, especially since Patterson was blessed by the president of the country, John F. Kennedy.
The challenger takes any of... The Liston hook to the head is the first good punch of the fight. A left, a grazing right, and a solid left to the cheekbone dropped the champion.
It was the first and currently the only time in the history of the super heavyweight division when a challenger managed to knock out the undisputed champion in the first round. The fight lasted only 2 minutes and 6 seconds. For Sonny Liston, it was a long-awaited moment of triumph. He had a speech prepared to give when he landed in Philadelphia, the boxing city where champions became true heroes. When Sonny arrived in Philadelphia and stepped off the plane, no one greeted him except a few reporters. Here's how the episode was described by one of the witnesses. Liston looked around and you could literally see the look of pain in his eyes. He had been deliberately insulted. Philadelphia wanted nothing to do with him. Liston's abundant mud-slinging in the press over many months took its toll. Only he wasn't a heavyweight that no one liked. He was made that way. And in the moment of his triumph, which he had come to against all odds, and which he was so eager to share with all people, he was nobody's favorite. But the public's ignoring of Liston was only half the problem. Philadelphia police began literally chasing the world champion. The last straw was the episode when Liston was stopped and ticketed for driving too slow. Sonny traveled 2,500 kilometers west. He moved to Denver, Colorado. Leaving Philadelphia, he uttered a phrase that became famous. "I'd rather be a lamppost in Denver than a meter maid in Philadelphia." Things didn't get any easier after the change of residence. Now Liston was being harassed by the Denver police. People around Liston claimed that it was during this period that Sonny began to fall apart psychologically. He began to abuse alcohol, thus making the police's job easier. When officers saw Liston's white Cadillac, they immediately pulled him over and periodically had a perfectly legal excuse to take Liston to the station. Meanwhile, Floyd Patterson decided to exercise his right to a rematch. Of course, there were hopes that Floyd and D'Amato would work something out, but even if they didn't, it would be stupid to refuse a big fee. The size of the fee could have exceeded $1 million. At the time, the only boxer in history to receive $1 million for a fight was Jim Tunney. In 1927, in his second fight against Jack Dempsey, Tunney's fee was $990,000. Tunney paid the promoter $10,000 to write him a check for exactly $1 million. Therefore, Tunney is the first boxer to receive $1 million for a fight, not earn it, because he actually made $990,000. In the case of the Liston-Patterson rematch, the boxers could have earned $1 million. Even before the first fight, D'Amato made sure that in the case of a rematch, the boxers would split the earnings in half. In the first fight, champion Patterson received about 50% of the total income, Liston only 12.5%. In the rematch, both boxers received 30% of the total revenues each. In the end, each received $400,000, and it was the first fight in boxing history in which both boxers' fees were over $1 million. Liston was a 4-to-1 favorite because, again, there were many people who believed that from the second evil, good would definitely defeat the very evil they read about in the newspapers. The rematch took place on July 22, 1963, and lasted only 4 seconds longer than the first fight.
Challenger's long right hand grazes the champion's chin, but Liston's countering left hook is on target and sets up the second knockdown. Two jarring right hands are followed by the knockout blow, the left uppercut.
And this despite the fact that during the period of preparation for the fight, Liston was already regularly attached to the bottle. But apparently for Patterson, Liston was that insurmountable opponent, because then Floyd continued to fight with serious positions. He defeated real title challengers and even challenged for the championship belt, although unsuccessfully. But no one had done to Patterson in his entire career what Liston had done to him, and twice. After 2 resounding victories over Patterson, Liston faced a young and brash challenger named Cassius Clay. This is, by the way, the only case in history when a boxer had 2 fights for the title of world champion against one person, but this person went to the fight under different names. In the first fight, it was Cassius Clay, and in the second, Muhammad Ali. It was this confrontation that made Ali a world star. His trash talk and attempts to intimidate Sonny became boxing classics.
Ladies.
Oh, may I ask you this? I'll never lose a fight. It's impossible. Tell it. It's impossible.
Never lost a fight in your life.
Ask any of my fans when was the last time they lost. I'm too fast.
Champion from
I'm
the
the
crib.
king. Born the champ.
Born the champ from the crib.
An unheard of thing happened at the Main Street Gym in Miami. Challenger Cassius invaded while Liston was training. Clay's bravado was never more evident, but Liston was not an appreciative audience. Sonny had to be restrained to protect Clay, supposedly.
My New Year's revolution is to knock out that big ugly bear, shake up the whole world in 1964, and talk no more.
Now, would you please do us one favor and look right into the camera and wish Sonny Liston a very, very happy New Year.
Yeah, I wish him a happy New Year because he's going to need happiness after I annihilate him because I'm going to beat him so bad, he's going to think he robbed the bank. And I'm getting tired of talking.
Is this going to call for a new contract signing?
I don't know what it's going to call. I'm just ready to fight, and I'm glad it'll be here where all these big-mouth people here in Miami talking about I talk too much, and Liston's going to whoop me. Well, I want all of them to be there, and I'm going to shut up all of his mouths. For those of you who won't be able to see the Clay Liston fight, here's the 8th round exactly as it will happen.
We'll do that now. I'll tell you what, I'm serious. If you can get your backers and my backers and your cut and my cut, you know, they get just as much as us. We doing all the work. But still, you take your cut and I take my cut, and we'll do that. I'm for that. Want to take off. Meet in the front door. That's a good deal, but I don't believe you want to do it because you can use the money you're going to make because that's going to be your last.
Listen.
Tom, do you think you can whoop me?
Wait a minute. Just for that, I'm going to give you half of mine if you just show up.
You guys. You guys, and that don't make no sense. No, I tell you what you do. Hold it. Listen, attention. Listen to the king. Listen, I tell you what we do. I want the reporters to hear this. I want everybody in your gym to hear it. I want everybody in my gym to hear it. This is why I am so great, because I stop the people before the fight, and I stop them right there in the track and let the world hear this. I'm going to whoop you. And if I whoop you, will you crawl across the ring and kiss my feet?
Kiss your feet. Yeah.
Don't get out of it, will you?
Yeah.
All right, hold it. Don't be trying to, I'm not joking or trying to get
Listen, don't you make me that same promise, because I'm not going to be around that long. Wait until you come to kiss my feet.
You're not calling the bet. Call the bet. I want to trap you. I done told you what I'm going to do if you whoop me.
You want to trap me? I done trapped you. I got you to a contract. That's all the trapping I need.
Quit changing the subject, man.
You don't need to trap me. All you need to do is show up.
Oh, man, you're just rapping off at the mouth, and we're not going to get nowhere. We're not going to be on air long. Will you crawl across the ring, kiss my feet, and tell me I'm the greatest if I whoop you?
If you ever dream of that, you better catch the plane and leave town.
Oh, man, I proved you wrong. You backed up, didn't you? You won't predict like me, will you? You're not too sure of yourself, are you, huh? You don't want to put yourself on a limb, do you? That shows you I'm the greatest.
I just don't want to wait around all night for you to come across the ring.
I'm young, I'm handsome, I'm fast, I'm pretty, and can't possibly be beat.
You might be young and handsome, but you won't be after I finish with you.
If you like to lose your money, be a fool and bet on Sonny.
I'm pretty sure people's not a fool to bet on you. They have to be a fool and bet on me.
You're 40 years old if a day, and you don't belong in the ring with Cassius Clay.
No, I shouldn't, because it'd be a disgrace to let the people see me kill you like I am.
The odds should be 3.5 to 1 that you won't show up for the fight.
The odds should be 10 to nothing that you don't last for the first round.
Sonny Liston, Mr. Check, Nylon. Further, we would like to say at Fiscal Street in Chester, Pennsylvania. If he wants me, you tell this to your camera, your TV man, your radio man, and you right there in the
whole world. If Sonny Liston whoops me, I'll kiss his feet in the rain. I'm out of the rain on my knees, tell him he's the greatest, and catch the next jet out of the country. That's what I think about Sonny Liston. I didn't say it would go 30 rounds. I said I was going to train for 15 rounds of running and 15 rounds of fighting all at the same time. Yeah. No training. I don't have to train for no man weighing 230 pounds. Man, light heavyweight can't keep up with me. I'm the prettiest thing since Sugar Ray and with football. Go ahead, let's hear from you. I can't tell that now. You don't have to talk. He's the champ. I do all the talk. You're the champ for talking. I'm the champ for fighting. About 5 days before the fight. Fight is on. Annihilation is on. So happy. Let's get it on. Want to go down? I whoop you now. The crowd ain't big enough yet. Patterson was so scared he couldn't even walk. Man, I ain't scared. I come to your house at 2 o'clock in the morning looking for you. I ain't scared of nobody. It's going to be a hard. It's going to take a good man to whoop me. You can look at me, I'm loaded with confidence. I can't beat me. I had 180 amateur fights, 22 professional fights, and I'm pretty as a girl. I don't get hit. I don't get hit, I'm so pretty. So that's what I'm afraid of. Boy, you're going to be so tired in 5 rounds. I'm bad. I'm bad.
After such a promotion of the fight, there was a feeling that this was the main fight in history. But there were mysteries in the first fight as well, such as Ali's burning eyes. The explanation for this came many years later. Allegedly, Liston's Catman applied some substance either on the boxer's gloves or shoulders. But there is no real evidence of this, although the footage of the first fight clearly shows Ali blinking his eyes strangely between rounds and complaining of burning in his eyes. On the other hand, it's hard to imagine some substance on his gloves or on his shoulders getting into his opponent's eyes exclusively. Let's say Ali throws a punch and hits either his shoulder or his gloves, collects some of the substance on his gloves, and then hits Liston in the eye area, and then Liston will be in trouble. Is that a possible scenario? Absolutely. But what happened in the second fight, which lasted only 2 minutes and 12 seconds, put all that on the back burner. The Phantom Punch excites boxing fans to this day. Even if you're watching the video in 2085, there's no arguing that Ali threw a precision punch. The question is the aftermath of that punch. Was it so well-timed and accurate that Liston couldn't resist, and it took him more than 10 seconds to get to his feet? How could this happen to a man who has spent the last 5 years simply destroying the best representatives of the division one by one? One theory is that many feared an assassination attempt on Ali by Malcolm X. You can read more about this in the Ali Liston issue. There was talk that Ali could be shot during the fight, right in the ring, since that was the only place where he didn't have the 12 bodyguards he was assigned by the FBI around him. So Liston wanted to get out of the ring as fast as possible. But if Sonny Liston was so afraid for his life, why not withdraw from the fight at all? According to another version, Liston gave up the fight on the orders of the Mafia, but there are inconsistencies here. First, boxing changed after the purge by the U.S. Senate. At the time of 1965, about boxing could not be said that it was under the control of criminals. Secondly, if Liston was connected to the Mafia, why would they force Liston to give the belt to some young upstart, as many called Ali, who originally had no ties to the criminal organizations? What I say next is my personal opinion. And while conspiracy theories give any story a special charm, perhaps it was much simpler than that. Just imagine a man under constant pressure in the form of harassment in the press and under the scrutiny of the police because of the wrong skin color in the opinion of those years. And it goes on for years. And the more you push for it, the more resistance there is. It gets to the point where even the president of the country wants you to fail. Liston was not the first black man with a criminal record, but no black champion had ever been so humiliated and harassed as he was. Add to that his father's cruel attitude and his mother's indifference during his childhood. Against the background of all this, It doesn't seem strange that Sonny Liston at some point simply got tired of fighting and broke down. By the time of the second fight with Ali, it was difficult to answer with precision the question of what Liston did more, training or drinking. Liston had already realized that no matter how much he tried to get rid of his image, which was mostly given to him by the press, for the public, he would remain a criminal, a gorilla, and a heavyweight that nobody liked. And since that's the case, what's the point of it all? Who knows? Maybe Sonny Liston subconsciously wanted to lose to Ali, just to relieve himself of the burden he was unable to carry. Interestingly, after 2 losses, Liston decided to hide from the American press and audience. He went to Sweden, where he had a number of official and exhibition bouts. Sonny returned to the American ring 3 years later after 2 fights with Ali. I walked over to him. He was alone in the far corner of the locker room. I told him, "I know how you feel. I've been through it myself." And he didn't say a word. He just kept looking at me, and he had his unkind look on his face. I don't think he even realized he was looking at me with that look on his face, but I kept talking anyway. Eventually, I told myself that I was unlikely to get through. I told him, "I'll see you later." I headed for the door, and as soon as I got to the door, he ran up to me, put his hand on my shoulder. I turned around, and he said thank you. And at that moment, I realized that I was able to give him my support. After Ali's 2 wins over, Liston Muhammad's next opponent was Floyd Patterson. The audience cheered for Patterson, who stated to Ali that the image he presented of a black Muslim was an embarrassment to America. The audience was fair. Years later, Ali admitted that he made a mistake when he refused to leave the Nation of Islam and blindly believed what the organization's founder, Eli G. Muhammad, imposed on him. Cloaked in good causes, the organization turned out to be a group of black radicals with political ambitions. The donations to her were not for fighting black rights, but to ensure that Eli G. Muhammad lived a carefree life. At the time, Ali didn't realize what he was getting into, and his remarks often contained a note of racism against the white population. As the fight progressed, Ali mocked Patterson and called him White America. Unfortunately for Patterson, Ali was too good and won by technical knockout in the 12th round. In 1972, 7 years after their first fight, they met again. Although Patterson was losing, he looked good. The fight was stopped after the 7th round, due to Floyd's left eye being completely closed. This was Patterson's last fight of his career. After his career ended, Patterson served 2 terms as chairman of the New York State Athletic Commission. He often traveled to Sweden to visit his former rival, at that time already a friend, Ingemar Johansson, as well as his younger brother, Raymond, who went to Switzerland in 1965 and worked there as a trucker. Patterson has 2 daughters and an adopted son, Tracy Harris Patterson, who later became a 2-weight world champion. In 1993, Tracy Harris created a bit of a sensation by defeating Mexican boxing legend Daniel Zaragoza early. Floyd Patterson and Tracy Harris Patterson are the first father and son in boxing history to become world champions. Floyd spent the last years of his life battling Alzheimer's disease and prostate cancer. He died on May 11, 2006. He is a man who won the world super heavyweight title twice. That being said, he was very humble. He never bragged about anything, not his fights, or anything he accomplished in life. He always inspired you. He always said positive things. I remember we were driving through his old neighborhood. Me, my sister, and my dad. He stopped and started talking to people. He did that a lot. A couple men came up who looked like they were homeless. My dad started talking to them. They were hungry and asked for money. He didn't want to give them the money because he wasn't sure it would be spent in the right way. But he said, "If you're hungry, I have an idea. We'll all go out to lunch." My dad, me, my sister, and 2 homeless people went to lunch, and he told them many stories from his life. In 1991, Floyd Patterson was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. At the same ceremony, Sonny Liston was also inducted into the Hall of Fame. He finally got the recognition he had dreamed of for so long. But unfortunately at that time, Sonny had been dead for over 20 years. Not only is the exact date of his birth unknown, but the exact date of his death is also unknown. Liston died between the evening of December 29th and the morning of December 31st, 1970. His wife left for New Year holidays to relatives, and returned only on January 5th. On that day, she found the body, which had already begun to decompose. It was impossible to determine the exact time of death. Therefore, the middle part of the probable range was taken, and December 30th was specified. The toxicology report stated that traces of heroin decomposition were found in the body, but it was impossible to establish that the death was the result of an overdose. In other words, maybe she was, but too much time had passed to say for sure. But even the presence of the heavy drug in Liston's body raised a number of suspicions. First of all, over the last couple of years, Liston has picked himself up, gotten in pretty good shape, and was ranked in the top 5 super heavyweight boxers. It is highly doubtful that Liston's form improved from being hooked on heroin. 6 months before his death, he defeated Chuck Webner, and his next opponent was to be George Foreman, who, by the way, signed a contract at the time when Liston was already dead. On this occasion, Foreman will say that he literally signed a contract to fight a dead man. Next, it was long and well known that Liston had a panic fear of needles. This was confirmed by several treating doctors, Liston's trainer, and wife all at once. He even canceled a trip to Africa when he found out he had to get a number of vaccinations. But let's assume that Liston's entourage is protecting him, and the former champion injected himself. But then why, according to the police report, no syringes, tourniquets, or injection preparation items were found in the house? Some police officers speculate that all the items could have been removed by the wife before the police arrived to save her husband's reputation. But why would she leave 3 packs of heroin lying around in the kitchen in an attempt to save her reputation? If she could theoretically have gotten rid of the compromising items from her husband, why did the police not pay any attention to this at all and take no action to try and find these important items? Despite the presence of traces of alcohol and heroin, the final report stated that Liston died of natural causes, so the case was immediately closed. A current athlete of about 40 years died of natural causes? Because of this, there is an opinion that Sonny Liston was murdered, and several versions of why this could have happened. One theory is that crime bosses asked Sonny Liston to lose a fight against Chuck Webner to capitalize on a big bet. But Sonny won the fight, and someone lost a lot of money. According to another version, the former champ was involved in the Las Vegas shady business and asked for too big a share in the business, and they got rid of him. There is even speculation that Liston's murder was covered up by the police. This version is fueled by the fact that the police quickly closed the case without finding anything suspicious in what happened. Indeed, why investigate the death of one of the most famous athletes in the United States, filled with contradictory circumstances? It's just an ordinary day in Las Vegas. And here's what his coach Johnny Tokua had to say about Sonny Liston. I guarantee you that Liston's death had nothing to do with drugs. Again, you can say that Johnny is protecting his boxer, but Johnny was an old school man, and he never had a reputation as a storyteller. He was highly respected in the boxing world, and even recognized champions were honored to train at Johnny's gym. The theory that someone injected Liston with a lethal dose is also ultimately stymied, but interesting points are still present. In the early 1980s, a Vegas police informant reported that Sonny Liston was murdered on the orders of Ash Resnick. Ash Resnick was not only a criminal mastermind, but let's just say a man respected on many levels and well connected at that. Resnick was among the very powerful people who held the entire Las Vegas gambling business. Allegedly, Liston and Resnick had developed serious monetary differences, so Resnick decided to get rid of Liston. The executor of the contract killing by administering a lethal dose of heroin was Larry Gandhi, a Las Vegas police officer from the narcotics division. Interestingly, it was Gandhi who was part of the police team that worked at the scene of Liston's death. In early 1980, Gandhi was no longer on the police force, but a robber, and after the informant's report, they did not open a case against Liston. A few years later, the informant choked to death on exhaust fumes in his own car. The police ruled that the cause was a faulty exhaust system. Instead of starting the car and driving, the man started the car and fell asleep. And by an incredible coincidence, the exhaust system was defective. Apparently, the situation when in a car in Las Vegas, the exhaust goes directly into the cabin, is encountered at every turn. The question of how Sonny Liston really died remains unanswered. as well as the question of how closely he was connected with the Mafia. It is possible that the general opinion about Liston's close ties with the Mafia is based on the fact that boxing itself in the 50s was at the peak of its connection with crime, and the problem with boxing in those years was that if you wanted to fight at the top level, and mostly it seemed super heavyweight, one way or another you had to deal with representatives of the criminal world. For example, for some reason few people mention that Rocky Marciano's manager, L. Vine, worked for Frankie Carbo. He has also been spotted at parties at the homes of Carlo Gambino and Frank Costello. Carlo Gambino was the head of the Gambino family, part of the largest Italian-American mafia structure called the Five Families. The structure is still in operation today. The names of all who headed the families and heads now you can easily find out. Or Wikipedia. Frank Costello was called the Prime Minister of the Underworld. By the way, Gambino and Costello became the prototypes of Vito Corleone, a character in Mario Puzo's book The Godfather. Recommended reading. But it is still important to note that Marciano did not seek friendship with these people. They were the ones who really liked Rocky because of the fact that he was Italian. However, when you think of Rocky Marciano, you hardly think of him as a boxer who was associated with the Mafia. Rocky had a crystal clear reputation, although Liston's situation wasn't particularly different from Marciano's. Neither man sought this friendship. It just happened sometimes that some people's friendship just couldn't be denied. The only difference was that Marciano was a white man who had broken the 15-year hegemony of the black super heavyweight champions, and Liston was a black man with a prison sentence, and the bad guy role, especially with his intimidating stare, suited him perfectly. Another example is Joe Louis, who held the world super heavyweight title for 13 years and defended the belt 25 times in a row. Probably many people have heard the story that after the end of his career, Louis quickly squandered his earnings, and eventually he even had to work as a doorman in one of the hotels in Las Vegas. But not many people know that that hotel belonged to a man named Ash Resnick, who gave the job to the former champion. So Joe Louis not only greeted guests at the entrance to the hotel, but also did a job for Resnick to knock out debts. This is not at the level of rumor, but at the level of FBI investigation. But as I said, Resnick was a man with connections. So the FBI guys, try as they might, they never got to Resnick. Maybe they were afraid the car's exhaust system would suddenly break down. You ever hear of Joe Louis doing anything dark? I don't think so, but there was a period in his life, just for a short time. They say that at the very beginning of his boxing career, when Frankie Carbo managed the processes in boxing to create the desired effect, Sonny also went with the right people who collected debts. But all this is just at the level of rumors. Whether it was or not now, no one can say for sure. And although Liston has dozens of arrests to his credit, there is not a single one on suspicion of murder, extortion, or intimidation. Among the charges against him, there is not a single one that has anything to do with the activities of mafia structures. He was only once called as a witness to testify during a U.S. Senate investigation into the influence of crime on boxing. Liston, though, had his license revoked, but it was a matter of weeks. After his testimony, he returned to the ring with no problem. Given the seriousness with which the government has taken to cleaning up boxing, if Liston had been found to be connected to Carbo, not only through boxing, as many boxers are, but also by helping in underground endeavors, he would have gone to jail along with Carbo. Commenting on her husband's ties to the Mafia, Geraldine Liston stated, "If Sonny worked for such powerful people, why did we live so poorly until he started getting good fees in boxing?" End quote. Given what a large-scale PR campaign to Liston arranged by the press, is not surprising that the trail of this PR stretched through the decades. So the question, was Sonny Liston associated with the Mafia? We can answer, yes he was, because all professional boxing at a certain point in time was closely connected with Mafia structures. And this is the only reliable answer we have. Everything else is rumors, myths, and legends. Don't get me wrong, Liston wasn't a dandelion either. A series of armed robberies at gas stations and coffee shops is a very serious offense. Sonny did illegal things he wasn't proud of, but he served his time, and in a place that few people ever come back from in one piece. and some people don't make it back at all. But that was before boxing. And in this case, Liston was nothing more than a product of the system. The 13th Amendment, outlawing slavery, was passed in the United States in 1965. And in 1943, black people harnessed their children to the plow because they themselves were being harnessed, but only figuratively, by white employers. In the mid-19th century, black people in slavery worked for a bowl of soup a day, and 100 years later, when slavery was outlawed, they worked for money. But only with that money could they afford the same bowl of soup a day. So what's the difference? So a lot of these people had little choice: be a slave or be a gangster. But even here, Liston made an attempt to create a third option for himself when he went to school. But in the end, from the age of 13, he had to make his way alone in a society where black people were mostly not even considered human. Sonny Liston is probably the most enigmatic figure in world boxing. No one knows when he was born. It is not known exactly when and how he actually died. Many opponents he broke with just one look. Mike Tyson once said, "Liston makes me look like an honor student." They called him a man with a dark aura. But Sonny had a good sense of humor. In his circle of friends, he was a very gentle and kind person and liked to give his friends expensive gifts. He often visited various children's institutions. It was when surrounded by children that Sonny looked happier than ever, and the children adored him. As one of Liston's friends said, Sonny knew that children needed nothing from him but attention. So with them, he could cast off his harsh mask and be himself. Liston never refused to talk to people who approached him on the street, but the press tried to keep these stories out of the public eye. Some facts about him as a person only became widely known after his death. Sonny Liston is a man of mystery, a man of legend, a legend with a plus or minus sign everyone will decide for himself. On his modest grave is written, Charles Sonny Liston, 1932-1970, without specific dates. And just below that it says, a man. This is symbolic, because in his lifetime, Liston wanted to be seen as an ordinary man. He made mistakes, but recognized them and strived to be a better man.
Liston was the real deal. You know, like some guys out here, they get in the paper. Liston was knocking the cops out, breaking the just knocking. So when he comes to a town, Liston comes to Philadelphia, so to speak. The cops made a call. They come to the train station, the bus station, wherever you at. You can't come here. You get on the bus and leave. They won't let him. St. Louis, you can't come here. The cops at the train station, get on the bus and leave. They won't let him come in the States.
Too dangerous.
Just for formidable, mean son of a bitch. And he happened to be a fighter.
You rank yourself number 3, and above you, you rank Liston and Patterson. Which would you rather fight and why?
Well, to tell you the truth, I would fight Floyd Patterson because Sonny Liston is a much rougher fighter than Patterson. He's a much harder hitter than Patterson. And Sonny Liston, I watched him here in the gym a few months ago, and he can hit a guy in the elbows and just about break his arm.
Oh, Sonny Liston, no doubt the scariest human being I've met in the ring.
I never took a step back, but no one made me box. On Sonny Liston, I was his stablemate, and we would spar, and I knew then I had to back away.
Probably the strongest heavyweight I'd ever dealt with. The only man to make me back up consistently. He'd look at people and just look right through them, wouldn't answer questions, and he wasn't putting on being mean. He was just not the nicest fella you'd meet. And I said, if that's the way you have to be heavyweight champ of the world, I'm gonna be that.
If he would come to me, I'd kill him. And if he run, I'm gonna catch him and kill him.
If he comes to me, I'm gonna break his neck. And if he chooses to run away, I'm gonna catch him and break his neck.
Liston was a great fighter. I seen him knock out a guy's teeth one night, and this is literally, it's the truth, there's no baloney. Hit him so hard, he dislodged the mouthpiece, and the teeth went with the mouthpiece.
Liston with another left hook, a right, and another left, and Bethia is down.
I'd seen him fight guys that were devastating punches. I'd seen him fight those guys. I've seen those guys knock the daylights out of him for a while, but then he would always come on to knock him out.
He closes in on Williams in the corner and sends in a volley of rights and lefts to the head. Williams goes down for the second time from that barrage of punches.
I had 147 fights. 4 world champions I fought 9 guys in the top 10, and nobody ever hit me like that guy. Every time he hit, he broke something. I went to 10 rounds with him. He broke my nose, my left cheekbone, and gave me 72 stitches.
Your own mind, you felt that you had to fight him? But I don't believe the public or the press would have ever criticized you if you had never fought him.
Well, that's true. In fact, there are many people that told me not to fight him because of his reputation. My manager, for one, the NAACP, and many other organizations, as well as the press, asked me not to fight him. First, you have to look at it like this. Sonny Liston was led into boxing. He fought his way up. He eliminated all other competition, and he fought himself up to being the #1 contender. And I feel that he deserved the chance. And I wanted to continue being the heavyweight champion, or at least feeling like it. That's why I gave him the chance.
A left to grazing right and a solid left to the cheekbone. Drop the champion.
Well, I would say that Sonny Liston is a extraordinarily good fighter, a very strong fighter, a very determined fighter.
Sonny Liston inspired me. He was in jail, he got out, he fought his way to the top, he beat everybody in front of him. So that inspired me to do something with my life while I was there in reform school and in prison.
Going back 15 years, how would you rate Liston as a champion?
Sonny Liston was, before I fought him, considered one of the greatest fighters in history. Sonny Liston had a punch that knocked out Floyd Patterson with just about one round fight. One fist as big as both of mine. Everybody was scared of him.
Were you scared of Liston?
Scared to death.
And left hook catches Cleveland Williams and drops him. Cleveland Williams battling to stay on his feet. Bang to the canvas again.
Sonny Liston, the misunderstood champ. Media painted him as a menacing stamp. An illiterate gangster they all would proclaim. But deep inside, he was well-read, not the same. The one who scared Ali Foreman and Tyson wanted a quiet life, no need for the fighting. His death is shrouded in mystery untold. Many say overdose or suicide, but he was coldly controlled. A hard life he had, but his spirit unbroken. He sought peace, yet in this rhythm he was awoken. Overdose or suicide, they all chatter loud, but behind those rumors the truth's hidden in a shroud. Sonny Liston lives on in our hearts. The truth about him slowly imparts. He wasn't a monster, just a man with a dream, whose life ended abruptly like a silent scream.
Right, and left hook to the jaw, which puts Williams down. He closes in on Williams in the corner and sends in a volley of rights and lefts to the head. Williams goes down for the second time from that barrage of punches. Sonny floors Garrett with a smashing left hook.
He wasn't a monster, just a man with a dream, whose life ended abruptly like a silent scream. Like a silent scream.
Solid left to the third time. Liston throws up throwing punches with Floyd Patterson, who got 90-something to the first round.
Sonny Liston lives on in our hearts.
Liston is going for drop punches and Floyd counters.
The truth about him slowly imparts.
The bomb quietly marks and Floyd is down.
He wasn't a monster, just a man with a dream, whose life ended abruptly like a silent scream.
As Liston gets off some more blockbusters. Johnson telephones McCandless here.
Sonny Liston, the misunderstood champ. Media painted him as a menacing stamp.
Liston going after Bill McMurray. Tremendous punches by Sonny Liston.
Scared Ali,
And McMurray.
Foreman, and Tyson wanted a quiet life, no need for the fight. His death is shrouded in mystery untold. Many say overdose or suicide. He was cold and